So I want to talk about, 5 tips that you could do this year to become successful. I made a video, a couple weeks ago talking about, 3 big keys to becoming successful, but these are just, another 5 extra tips that you guys could, take into account and, hopefully do something with, because, I noticed that this plays a huge part in my life and my success in the business that I run, the things that I have to do every day. So number one would obviously be make sure that God is always number one and you trust him with everything you do, no matter the circumstance or the situation that you're going through. God is always good. You always have something to be grateful for, because I remember back when I still, didn't have a lot, I was just opening my business. I was focusing, grinding, working. I didn't know if things are going to work out. And, I still had to find gratitude every day, something to be grateful for, because, such a huge key to success is just being grateful no matter your situation. So, always make sure that you're grateful and you trust God in everything that you do. The number 2 thing I would say is probably, leave the women alone for now. Like, you really only need one woman in your life, and that's when you're ready to get married. Like, there's no point in dating if you're not ready for marriage. There's no point in going to the club trying to get one night stands, because that's just such a huge distraction in today's generation of just lust, women in general. So, if you want to become successful and you're in that grinding phase, I say you leave the women alone, because number one, if you're working towards a goal, you probably don't have the means to afford a girl unless it's just for one night. And if you're just doing it for one night, then it's really just a big distraction. So, the number 2 thing I would say is probably just leave the women alone. That is a huge, huge thing in becoming successful. The third thing I would say is probably, finding somebody that's like-minded like you, find, your bro to lock in with, start and focus and grind on a business, because sure, you could potentially make more money running a business by yourself and be like, when you first start off, you'd make more money by yourself. You don't have to split, income or anything like that between 2 people. But in reality, you can go so much further quicker together. Even though you might be taking home a little bit less when you first start, you're going to get a lot further, in business and in life if somebody's there helping you out. As long as they're like-minded, you both serve God, you both better each other, you bring each other closer to God, both of your minds are sharp. It's going to be a lot better if you, find somebody like-minded. But if you don't have anybody like-minded, then, just do it with you and God. Like, that's not a problem at all, because when I first started my business, that's kind of what it was like. It was, just me and God. I didn't have anybody that was like-minded like me. Everybody was kind of, going around having fun, partying, doing all the things that I had no interest in doing, because I realized that, if I don't do this for myself, then nobody's going to do it for me. I don't come from a wealthy and successful, rich family. So, I had to realize that, if I want things to happen in my life, I just have to trust God and then end up doing something, and he will show me the path. I would say the number 4 thing is cut off all distractions in general, not just women or not just bad friends, but, look at how you spend every single day. Do you sit at home playing video games all day, watching TV, even reading books that, don't help improve your life? If you spend too much time at the gym, that's also not the best thing. If there's, something that you could be doing to improve your business. Obviously, I'm all 100% for working out and bettering yourself and doing the hard things, but just cut off all distractions in general. So, put that same focus and energy into starting a business instead of sitting there, trying to level up in the game, because you could actually be leveling up in real life. Buying the things that you want, doing the things that you never thought possible. Because, 4 years ago when I first started my business, I didn't think that I would achieve, what I have today. And, again, that's obviously all with God's help. But, I did have to put in the work. Like, God blesses diligent hands that, go out and work. So that's another, the 4th thing. Again, just cut off all distractions in general. And then the number 5 thing I would say would be making sure that, you're not spending money on things that you don't need if you don't have, the extra, income or, the extra savings. Because, for example, a lot of people might not know, but I bought my McLaren in cash. So, I could have went and put a down payment on something a lot nicer, like a Huracan STO or something like that. But instead, I fully believe in only buying the things that you could truly afford if it's not something that you need. Do you need this McLaren? No, you definitely don't need a McLaren. You just need, a car, a Toyota, to get around every single day. And obviously a Toyota is going to be cheaper than a McLaren. But, that's kind of the number 5 thing, is watch your spending. Make sure that the purchases that you make, they make sense. So, if you're in that grinding phase trying to build and focus on a business, don't be spending money frivolously. Just, reinvest it into the business. If you don't have anything to reinvest into, save it, because things will come up in the future where you actually do need to reinvest that money into your business to grow. So, the number 5 thing I would say is, again, watch what you spend money on. Only buy things that you need until you have, obviously God is going to bless you in anything that you do, as long as he sees you putting in the work and that you trust him. And, after, a period of time, if you could afford something, even if you don't, buy it in cash like I did with this car, you're more than welcome to, go ahead, put a down payment on a really nice car. There's no problem in getting a loan as long as you could afford it and you're not just buying it to look rich and successful. So, these are kind of the keys, not the keys, the 5 points that I have to, become successful this new year. Just, lock in, trust God, do everything that I just said, and then apply those other 3 keys from the other video that I posted. And I promise you, you guys will see success.